Hello, welcome to Sunday School on today, March 11th. I'm moving this around a little bit. And I would like someone to begin class today by offering prayer, please. Kane.
Dear God, thank you for being with us. Be with people on the road. Be with people with the weather. And be with people on our way to Grandma Buggy's memorial next Sunday. In Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, great. Kane, you can help me keep track of the time. I think that's right. So, all right.
Yeah, it is.
And yeah, you have a phone. I forget about that. Today we are discussing Matthew 26. What major holiday is coming up?
St. Patrick's Day.
Okay, I should.
April's Fool.
What religious
Easter.
major holiday? Yeah. And it's not coming up for till April, but it's coming up. And I am doing this reading through the Bible in a year thing with a group this year. And
How far?
this week, well, I'll show you what. This is what it looks like.
Uh-oh. Kelsey has one.
So today, let's see, this will be this week, this 11th. I've done this plus one more row. So every week we have to read these different things, and then we post in a forum something that we thought was interesting or whatever. And for this week, I posted about Matthew 26. And this is actually leading up to what is called Easter. I don't like to call it Easter in a biblical context because Easter is, I think, used one time in the Bible. But we are focusing on Jesus and what happened to him after he died, Mason. What? Like he died, and then what happened to him?
He got rose in the hospital?
Yes, he
After
rose.
3 days?
He was resurrected. Exactly what I was looking for. So I like to call it Resurrection Sunday. That's not completely accurate because that's not necessarily the Hebrew calendar, and our calendar aren't exactly in alignment. So Easter doesn't always fall on the Sunday after Passover. And or it's probably not even Sunday. I think it's Saturday. But that doesn't always fall on the same day. But for our intents and purposes, we're going to call it Resurrection Sunday. Are you looking for Easter in the Bible? Just have Kane Google it. Anyway.
Acts 12:4.
Okay. Do you want to read it?
Yeah, sure.
Acts 12:4. I'm going to turn this on you for a moment. You might have to bend over, though, because you're standing up and it's here.
Aye. Alright. And when he had a hand, I can't read that. Here.
It's 1 through 4.
Oh, well.
Apprehended
him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 coordinations.
I can't read that far away, sorry. Quaternions.
Quaternions of soldiers to keep him in tens after Easter to bring him for to the people.
So maybe in one of the coming weeks we can look up exactly what Easter means in that context, because it might not be exactly what you think it is. Easter, and I'm not going to go into this all in depth. We've talked about it a little bit before, but Easter is a pagan holiday. It's not a religious holiday. So that's why I prefer not to use that term when we are talking about our church stuff. If people want to celebrate that, fine, but that's fine. Anyway, so Matthew 26 happens before Jesus was crucified. And what were some of the terrible things that happened to Jesus when he was actually apprehended, and what did they do to him before and leading up to when he was put on the cross. Just to throw out a couple of
Right.
things. We're not talking about that specifically today.
He
but
had the crown of thorns on his head.
yep, they put that on his head and pushed it in.
His feet and hands were nailed to the wrists. Were nailed to the cross.
Okay.
Wouldn't that
Oh,
kill
or
him,
his
though?
wrist. I thought it was his
Because-
hands.
No,
'Cause
it
if-
goes
Probably
up.
here
If it
because
was like his
it would have ripped
wrist-
through his hands. They
if-
talked about that.
Because if it was his wrist, like, it
That-
would just, like, go through the blood thing.
No, that wouldn't kill him. What killed him was the fact that when you're up there and you're hanging, you can't breathe.
Oh.
That's what would have killed him. But he was beaten. He was beaten with, like, not just like, oh, I'm gonna spank you, you know. That sounded stupid, but like with like a metal ball with spikes on it, and you know things that were bad
Not my favorite.
that would tear your flesh off. Okay, so a lot of really bad things happened to him, and it wasn't only psychological; it was physical. But leading up to this, we're gonna read 26, and these were things that were really psychological damage and emotional, mental, because I want you to really think through how he felt. We read through this, we talk about the story about how he was crucified, and we just kind of say the words but don't necessarily think about what that actually entailed. So I want you to empathize, and do you know what empathize means?
It's a big word.
I said, do you know what it means?
Like
No.
No,
Empathize. Spell it out for me.
What word kind of does it sound like?
Empathy.
Empathy.
I don't know what that is.
And it also is similar to sympathize, but sympathy and empathy are two different things. Sympathy means, when you're going through, I feel bad for you.
I'm guessing empathy is I don't really care about you.
No,
Oh,
but good guess.
close enough.
Empathy, no, it's not close enough, but good guess. Empathy is when you try to understand what actually happened to that person through their point of view. Have you ever talked to someone about something, let's say, I'll just give an example, when my dad died. A lot of people were like, well, you know, we're sorry for you, whatever. Well, this is what happened when my dad died. Well, that's not being empathetic. Empathy is listening to that other person, really listening and really trying to understand what that person is going through, not what you are going through. Yes.
Gotcha.
What if like we're trying to say how we felt about it, and then how we're sorry, it's not like how we deal with it. We're telling you how
There is a time and place for that, definitely. But if you're listening to someone who is grieving and mourning, and maybe that person is you,
Yay.
that's not a very good emotion to have to feel, but we're human, so we have to feel it. But you should sit there and be an active listener and pay attention to them. In that moment, it's all about them, not about how I feel and you're telling me bad. Well, I've had this happen to me and that's XYZ. Empathy is really listening to that person, and we're going to listen to what happened to Jesus by this account. Of course, it's through Matthew's eyes, but I want you to really think about what he went through. And you don't have to answer this question out loud, but do you have a friend or group of friends or somebody really special to you that you would call a good friend, that you can rely on, that you trust?
I don't know if I could rely on him. I can trust him though.
Okay,
yeah,
so
no, okay.
So think about that person or group of people. And this is about Jesus and his disciples, who were his closest friends. He was their teacher and mentor, but he was truly a friend of theirs. Okay? So 26 is the plot to kill Jesus, and I'm going to just highlight the verses that I want you to really think about. It was right before the Feast of the Passover that this was happening. And right at the end of the Passover is when,
He died.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he was like the lamb sacrifice. Okay, so it says, you know And Jesus is speaking to his disciples. You know that after 2 days, it's the feast of the Passover, and the Son of Man is betrayed to be crucified. Who's the Son of Man, Mason?
Jesus.
Mm-hmm. He was talking about himself, but he said he was betrayed to be crucified. What does it mean to be betrayed?
Like someone you trust, like
It's like a spy almost.
no, it's like
No.
someone you trust rats you out.
Yes. They disappoint you in the worst possible way. It's someone you think you can rely on, and they let you down in a huge way. So the word betray is really... Why don't you Google that while we keep going? Look up what betrayed actually means. So they assembled together the chief priests and the scribes, the elders of the people, unto the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and consulted that they might take Jesus subtly and kill him. But they said, no, if we do that on a feast day, which was a big deal, this was a main feast for those people, there would be an uproar among the people. So they didn't want that repercussion to come back to them. What does that mean?
Okay.
Betrayed.
Expose one's country, a group, or a person to danger by treacherously giving information to an enemy.
Oh.
Okay, that's like treason, but is there another
No,
definition?
it's the same thing.
Well, yeah, but that definition was...
Unintentionally reveal.
Okay, it could unintentionally be, it could intentionally be.
Mm-hmm.
So you're giving something up that you were trusted with. Trust is huge. Okay, so I should make sure. Yeah, I'm in the right chapter. So the next session of this, Jesus was in Bethany, which is a city, and he was in the house of Simon the leper. There came to him a woman having an alabaster box, which is a precious stone, an alabaster box of very precious ointment, and poured it on his head as he sat at meat. Anointing is something that was done through the Bible, and it's something to signify like that people would be anointed and prayed over if they were sick and they really wanted to earnestly ask for God to help with that situation. Anointing, they would anoint the king when he was going to take power. So it was a big deal to be anointed. It was very significant, especially since it was a precious ointment. It cost a lot of money, and it came in a box that was fancy and ornate. So his disciples saw it and they said, "Why are you wasting that ointment? The ointment might have been sold for a lot of money, and then you could have given it to the poor," which is a valid argument. But Jesus said, "Why are you giving this woman a hard time? Because she just anointed me. She brought a good work to me." And Jesus knew that he was going to be leaving soon because he was going to die. He was going to preach for a little while longer, and then he would go up into the heavens to be with his Father, which is where he is now. And he knew all of this. I'm not sure at this point if the disciples understood that or not. But so Jesus said, why are you bothering this woman? She did something good for me. You'll always have the poor to take care of, but you won't always have me here with you. So she did that in symbolically for his burial. So they were kind of giving him a hard time, and it was something like if somebody gave you something special or did something special for you, and they're like, why did they waste the money on that?
Yeah.
You know? So again, I'm pointing out all the instances in this where Jesus was still a man. He still had all these emotions, but he didn't react to them like a lot of people would, because in some of these instances, I would have been mad and I would have, and he did not ever sin. So he just took everything in stride, and that is amazing to me. And as we're going through these, think of how much Jesus loved us, because that is the sacrifice he gave. He put up with all these things. Yes.
Not to be the guy that says everything's bad, but if you think about it correctly, the way in my mind I'm thinking of the way you said it, he kind of did it to go to heaven with his dad more than really saving us, if you think about it right.
No,
Because
I don't agree with that.
but the way you're saying it is making me think that.
His goal, and he knew that his purpose in life was to save the world. And not that his goal was, I'm going to go up into the heavens to be with my Father. His goal, and he knew his purpose in this life was to save the world. He just knew that. And we'll get to some of those in 1 second. So that happened. And then, so he had 12 really, really close friends.
That's a lot of friends.
Then one of them, what happened with one of them?
He betrayed.
He betrayed him.
Peter.
No. Judas.
He betrayed him to death. It wasn't that he lied to him or he did something, insignificant. He died as a result of that betrayal. That was, does anybody know? Judas Iscariot, yes. So he came over and they're like, hey, if I give you Jesus Christ, what will you give me?
Oh, yeah.
What?
I said, Judas Iscariot came to the high priest and he's like, hey, I can give you Jesus Christ.
Oh,
but what are you going to do for me?
I can hear you.
And they said, you know what? 30 pieces of silver.
I would ask for
He
more.
sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver.
That's not all silver.
I mean, it was
Back then.
a lot of money, but for the man that would save the world.
And then,
So from that time on, he was looking for an opportunity to betray him. He was finding that perfect time. So the first day of the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, and again, this was during Passover, the disciples came to Jesus and they said, well, where do you want to go so we can prepare for the Passover, essentially? So he told them where to go. They got everything ready. They're sitting down to eat. Has anybody seen the image of the Last Supper? It's a very famous painting. If you haven't seen it yet, you have. I think Michelangelo painted it.
It's at the
Really?
Costa Church, isn't it? Well, what the thing of it is.
It's at our school.
yeah, it's at the elementary.
I think that one's at the Sistine Chapel. Is where the original is in the Vatican. Here,
It's like a long table.
Gavin might have seen it.
Oh yeah, I know where that is.
So Jesus is in the middle, and all of his that's that image, the Last Supper. That's what that is. So he sat down and he said, "One of you will betray me."
What's up?
What does that mean?
9 minutes.
We only have 9 minutes left. Okay, I'll hurry it up. So he said, one of you will betray me. And I'm going to skip over part of this. Judas actually said, Master, is it I? And Jesus said, you have said. So in the next passage, I want to point out that he knew that he would be dying because he said, take this, eat it, it's my body. They were doing communion. Take this, drink this, this is my blood. So he knew what was coming up. And how nerve-wracking would that be? You knew you're going to die.
If it was for a good cause, hey, I don't care.
You still would not want to die.
Yeah, true.
And you'll see that in the next section here. So first of all, Jesus said to them after that, all of you, it says all of you will be offended of me this night. But that means you're all going to leave. You're going to scatter for a while because of me. You're going to leave me. He said, it was written, there was a prophecy, I will hit the shepherd, or smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. Peter answered, though, and he's like, I'm not going to leave you, Jesus. Because he was one of his really good friends.
I like Peter.
And he's like, I'm not going to leave you. And he said, I'm going to tell you, Peter, tonight, before the rooster crows, you'll deny me 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
And Peter said again, even if I were to die with you, I would not deny knowing you. And all the other disciples agreed. So they came to the Garden of Gethsemane, which I think that you guys have all heard of. It's a garden where Jesus went to pray before
Oh, yeah.
he was captured. So he said to the disciples, why don't you sit over here? I'm going to go pray. And again, this verse, he took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee and began to be sorrowful and very heavy. He was deeply saddened because he knew this was going to happen. He said, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even unto death. Just wait here for me and watch with me. So he went and he prayed to God. Oh, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. What does it mean, let this cup pass from me? What do you think?
This cup?
He said, if it's possible, don't make me do this.
Oh.
I don't want to do this. But it's not what I want, God. It's whatever your will is, I will do that. I don't want to do it, but it's your will that needs to happen. So he comes down over to the disciples. They were sleeping. And he said, you couldn't even stay up with me for an hour? Are you kidding me?
An hour?
Think
That's
of
not
your
long.
best friends. You are about ready to die and you know it. And you are earnestly praying to God and ask them to stay with you and they fall asleep.
That would be me.
Do you think he felt? Think of how he felt.
Man, rats.
No. He was deeply sorrowful.
Yeah. I'm trying
So,
to make this more
Owen, I need to finish this lesson up. So, okay. So he went and he prayed again a second time. He said, Father, if this cup may not pass from me except I drink it, if you won't let this pass from me without me having to do it, then your will is done. That's what your will is, and that's what I will do. And he came back again and found them asleep again. In my mind, I would be frustrated at this, but again, Jesus never sinned. So he was showing them extreme patience. So he went and he prayed a 3rd time and he said the same words. He asked God 3 times to not make him go through this. He knew how terrible it was going to be. At least he had an inkling. He might not have known to the extent, but so he came back down and he said to his disciples, sleep now, go ahead and rest. Very soon the Son of Man will be betrayed. He knew that. So the next portion of this is when Judas Iscariot betrayed him. He kissed him on the cheek to indicate to the high priest or the chief priests and the soldiers, this is the guy. He kissed him on the cheek. So he did that, and Jesus said after that, he's like, friend, where did you come from? He called him friend. And that to me is just it's ironic because he's calling him friend. He had just betrayed him, and he knew it was happening, and he knew who it was going to be. So one of them, I'm not sure. I thought it was Peter, but one of Jesus' disciples took their sword and chopped off the soldier's ear. And even in his sorrow and knowing what was going to happen, Jesus said, no, you can't do that. You can't. You need to think about, if you're going to live by that sword, you're going to die by that sword. And so he healed the ear, and he was saying that the scriptures must be fulfilled. Because he said, if I absolutely wanted to, do you think I cannot pray to my Father and have 12,000 angels right here at my disposal? But he said, but how would the scriptures be fulfilled then? He knew that needed to happen, even though he didn't want it to. So, in verse 56, and we just have a little bit left to go. We'll finish when we'll finish. Okay. The scriptures, he said, but all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. Do you remember where he said that all of you would scatter because of me? Boom, they did it right then. So they led him up the high priest, where the high priest and the scribes and elders were. They were looking for a reason why he should die, but found none. It's one thing if you did something and there's justice, so to speak, and so you are having to do something to compensate for what you did. He didn't do anything. He did nothing. So they were trying to figure that out, but nothing happened. So they were asking him some questions, and he said, all you see here is the Son of Man. And he was talking about sitting on the right hand of power and coming in the clouds of heaven. And they're like, you're saying you're God. So they were not understanding what he was saying. And it would be hard maybe in the moment to understand and know. We know because we've seen the whole Bible. So we're like, why couldn't they understand that? Well, they were in the moment, right? So they decided that he was blaspheming and he should be killed because of that. They spit in his face, beat him up, smacked him, hit him, and that part hadn't even begun yet, the real physical abuse. The last part of this chapter was about Peter. Peter, one of his best friends. What did Jesus tell Peter he was going to do to him?
Deny.
Yeah.
Deny.
Well, yeah. And by denying him, he was going to betray him. So betrayed by two of his very best friends.
Wait,
So-
how did he betray him?
He said he well, hold on and I'll tell you. So Peter was there, and this woman came up to him and said, hey, you know what? I saw you with that Jesus of Galilee. You're one of his friends. You know what he said?
No, I'm not.
He said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. And he went outside, and another woman saw him and said unto the other people that were there, that guy, he was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again, he said with an oath, that means he was swearing, I swear I do not know that man. I swear I don't know him.
No.
And a little while later, the people that came by said, oh, did you hear that? They said, surely you're one of them. Don't trip on my bed. Bye. Surely you're one of them. I can tell by the way you're talking. Your speech gives you away. Because he had an accent or something of that era.
That's, yeah.
And then he began to curse and swear, saying, I do not know this man. And then the rooster crowed.
Aw, that's saddening.
And then Peter remembered. We're almost done. Peter remembered the words of Jesus. And Jesus had said to him, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
Wow.
And he went out and he realized what he had done and he just wept bitterly. That devastated him. I mean, he came back from this, but again, he had told him, you're going to deny me. And
Well,
he's like, no, I would never do that even if I had to die with you.
Well, what if he did say yes to them? What would happen to him?
He might have been killed with Jesus.
Okay.
So they were looking around for, that's why everybody scattered. That's why they said all the disciples forsook him and fled. Because they went in hiding for a little bit. They went to neighboring areas so they wouldn't be killed. So he did that. He fulfilled that prophecy. And that was that entire chapter. Can you imagine just in this chapter, and there was more beyond, before and after this, but think about how Jesus felt. He must have loved us and loved the world so much. We can't even imagine how much that is, can we?
No.
Because going through all of that and knowing it was for people he hadn't even met yet. He did it for you. And he did it for you.
I have something to say to you, though.
Yes.
I got something that actually can.
Okay.
It's one person over, 17 million people? It's one over 17 millions of people.
I know.
So, would you do that? It's one over a lot of
But
people.
it's, and you're right. You're looking, that's a big picture.
Yeah.
But it comes down to it. And remember, he was praying to God.
He asked him, though.
No, you're right. Please don't let me have to go through this. Please, is there any other way? But your will overcome. He knew that. But he still was struggling. Because if you knew you had to go through all that, it still would be devastating. So it's really an interesting layer of all of that which happened, don't you think?
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to talk about and just try to empathize what Jesus had gone through, because he went through so much for us. And I think sometimes we just think of it as words on the page, and it's so much deeper than that. So all right, thank you, and I'm going to stop the recording.